Hello, bronies. Spangle here with FOB Equestria, bringing you an interview with one of the community members who goes by Totally Not a Brony. You may or may not be familiar with him. However, he does extensive work drawing as well as writing for this community. So, say hello.
Hello, how you doing, Spangle?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
Well, it's a nice day.
It is. Well, depends on where you live, I suppose. But
It's always a nice day.
it's always a nice day, indeed. The standard response. Now, some of you may or may not be aware, but Totally Not a Brony is not a military brony, but he does a lot of military-themed stories and artwork. So why is that?
Well, I guess you could say that I'm a huge fanboy. Tom Clancy is mostly responsible for that. I kind of want to be him when I grow up. In addition, I've got quite a few family and friends that are in the military, and I've always been interested in that kind of thing.
So tons of exposure, even though no personal experience.
I'm on Wikipedia all the time.
Wikipedia is a great source of information, although not always 100% accurate, but it does try. So, you've got to get your information from somewhere. Now, you do have an interesting DeviantArt account with everything from a Vampire Lee to a Luna-themed AC-130. What do you have to say about just the odd variety of artwork, or maybe just your artwork in general on DeviantArt?
Well, I try not to get into ruts, and I do like variety. Maybe it's residual ADD from childhood or something making itself known, but I try not to do the same thing twice if I can help myself. I always want to be learning and doing something else.
All right. And your specific art style, I would say, is very true to the show's style. I would certainly say it's quality work. I mean, I've definitely seen less professional looking art on DeviantArt, so I have to say it's a bit refreshing to whenever I see one of your artwork pieces pop up in my DeviantArt notices. And I think one of my favorite pieces by you is probably, it's hard to choose, but I think so far it's Pinkie Pie and the drill instructor hat.
Yeah, well, there's drill sergeants on your staff.
Yes, there are.
And it just that personality is always something that is a trademark of the military.
Yeah, I would say that is probably when most people think of your standard military man. I think you're right. I think they probably do think drill instructor or drill sergeant, depending on what your particular service calls it. But same deal. The people who kind of shape you up and break you down and build you up into a military man. I think you are absolutely right in that. Now, you are somewhat of a notable author on FiMFiction with over 60 published stories of, again, an interesting variety, a great deal of which are military themed, just like your DeviantArt account, and over 1,200 followers. So that's quite the accomplishment, I have to say.
It just kind of happened. I'm still kind of surprised.
Yeah, I think you were mentioning earlier that you have yet to come across anyone with as many published stories as you with an active FiMFiction account. I think you mentioned someone
I'm trying to find somebody to prove me wrong, and if that's the case, please tell me. I have 63 stories as of today.
Yes, and the person you said who previously had you beat has since deactivated their FiMFiction account, which is too bad. No one can enjoy their stories anymore, but it was their decision to make, I suppose. It's just sad that Fandom is now deprived of so much literary effort, I guess is one way of putting it.
I've always tried to encourage people to write, to encourage them to do anything they can to become involved. I believe that everyone should have a voice and some sort of presence. If it's what you like to do, you should do it.
Absolutely. Do what you love. Now, speaking of being a part of the fandom, how did you initially become a part of the fandom? How did you come across bronies, and what kind of drew you in?
I think it was probably the Cheeseburger Network. In December of 2011, I just happened to click across My Little Brony, saw some stuff, kind of wondered what was going on. Went over to YouTube, watched the videos. You can get through the first season in about 8 hours if you are trying. And it was just kind of going from there. I first made my account on FiMFiction in February of 2012.
Oh, so shortly after. Now, what made you start writing?
Well, I've always liked to read specific topics, military, whatever else.
Right.
And I'd found plenty of that to read, but at some point there were a few things that I'd never seen that I wanted to read. And I decided that I just have to do it myself. My first story was titled Battleships Are Magic.
And I actually have not read that. I have read a few of your stories, but not that one in particular. Although that is kind of what I meant. I think that story somewhat demonstrates what I meant when I said an interesting variety on your FiMFiction account. Some of your stories are a little out there and definitely amusing, but some of them have a bit more of a serious tone as well. I think you have a good spread when it comes to themes. But I was just wondering, what has caused you to become such an active part of this community? It's one thing to say, I'm going to write a story or two. It's another thing to say, I'm going to write this. I don't know if you really made a conscious effort for this or if it's just happened, but not too many people have contributed as much, especially literary speaking, as you have.
Well, my first year on FiMFiction, I wrote 750,000 words. That's a little over 2,000 words a day, every day. I don't know. It just kind of
happened.
It just kind of happened. I didn't really mean to get into it that deep, but then I found that I really liked it and I wanted to continue. The community's really been good to me, and I find that fan fiction is a good way to really cultivate your writing because you can get instant feedback through comments.
Yeah, I think that's one thing this community does tend to be pretty good about in general is feedback, and not only that, constructive feedback. Typically bronies tend to be, if they're critical of something, they are critical with a reason. Very rarely will you see
there really is a measurable amount of love and tolerance in the community. I know it's not perfect, nothing really is, but it's still a nicer than usual fandom.
Yeah, I would agree on that. My next question kind of covers that topic a bit, which was along the lines of, what do you like most about this fandom, or maybe think is special about this fandom? I'm pretty sure I know what your answer might be here.
Well, it's really flexible, and I like that. We've got so many characters, even if only background characters, to use. And in addition to that, everyone seems to be pretty tolerant of things that you might do. We've got, action, adventure, comedy. I'll throw this in because it's a huge part of the fandom, shipping. I myself don't do it, but I understand there's a lot of people and a lot of business in that.
Yes.
But there's just so much you can do, and that's something I really like about My Little Pony.
So kind of like you said, the flexibility, and I think along that same idea is the creativity. So I can definitely see that, and I've noticed that significantly. You have such a great variety in this fandom. I mean, even just among your works, you see a variety. I think you kind of just your work by itself demonstrates to an extent what this community is capable of. I mean, hopefully I don't make you feel a little self-conscious when I say that, or whatever the term might be.
I'm always self-conscious. That's why I'm so big on security.
Oh, yes. I guess that's a good transition point to bring up the fact that, we should maybe point out that you somewhat live up to your name.
Well, I don't know. When I first posted my story over a year ago, I was really firmly in the closet, you might say. And to a point, I still am. There's only a small handful of people in my private life that know both of my names. But over time, it kind of evolved into a secret identity, and it's almost fun kind of maintaining such a thing in the shadows.
Kind of like a second life of sorts?
You might say that. I mean, in real life, I am just who I am, but on the internet, I've got 1,200 people following me.
Yeah, and not only that, I understand the whole, as some bronies have termed it, being in the stable.
That's a good way of putting it.
And it does take an extraordinary amount of energy at times to be publicly a brony, because so many people ask so many questions, and some people are just flat out mean about it, or just so confused by it that it does take a lot of energy. So not everyone is able or willing to expend that energy, and so I put
all my energy into writing and arting.
Well, I think that's probably a lot more productive, in my opinion. As many people have already probably discovered, I am one of those people who is publicly a brony, and I can say from personal experience, you might have made the smarter decision, good sir. But it's,
at the same time, I admire you for not concealing anything regarding who you are. Your public life is the same as your private life.
I try to be transparent as much as I can be, because I don't like, for me, it's a fact of I want people to know me for who I really am. And if they don't accept me, then I know that, maybe I shouldn't be acquainted with that person. So I think there's maybe a little bit of a life lesson in there. But like again, I say, to each their own. Live your life the way you think it is best lived.
True enough. And through 1,200 people, I've found a whole bunch of different variety of life experiences, opinions, everything else. That could be part of the reason why I have such varieties, because I know so many people. I know what they like. I know what some people might not like.
Yeah. Yeah. If you tend to interact with 1,200 people or so, you're going to get a good exposure to several different walks of life, certainly. Now, some people say to write about what you know, and being that you aren't part of the military, you've touched on this a little, but how do you really write stories centered around the military?
Well, I previously mentioned Wikipedia. I also have, I would say, a moderate amount of contacts who are or were part of the military. Recently, I wrote a story about Rainbow Dash at Red Flag, the Air Force training exercise out in Nevada. And I had a Super Hornet pilot from the Navy help me edit it. I found that as much as you can talk about stuff that isn't secret, military members generally are happy to do. People that love their work like talking about their work. And I've tried to capture some of that in what I write, sort of celebrating what it is.
Huh. So kind of a tribute of sorts.
I suppose you might say that.
It certainly sounds like something along those lines. I mean, you do your best, and I'm just going to say I do have a certain respect for you for actually doing your research, reaching out to people who have first-hand experience in the thing, because there are people who try to write stories with just their perceptions, what they think it's like in mind, without really looking into it, and they end up getting it completely wrong. But they just don't care enough to try and get it right. Is what it comes across as anyway. So I've
tried to do a little work regarding that. If I see errors, I'll try and be friendly about it and point them out. And that's sometimes led to me taking on editing jobs. Working out a story so that it will be better, because if it's a better story, I would more want to read it.
Yeah. So helping to improve the quality of the art in this fandom in general, I think that's a very noble cause.
There's currently like 8 or 9 stories that I'm editing for. And one you might be interested in, it's about pararescue.
Ooh.
It's something that I haven't seen before in the fandom, and I thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, there is definitely, that's something that you really, I know you do take on a lot of kind of editing projects. I mean, you've offered to even help edit one of my stories, which I'm very grateful for. So just to see your willingness to kind of help other people to improve the fandom, like I said, I think is definitely something to be admired. I mean, I feel like some people within the fandom, writers, musicians, artists, or, what have you, get so encompassed in their own work and their projects that they kind of lose sight of the fact that this is a community, and they really just never try to help anyone else out, and they're so focused on their projects, which I do understand to an extent. I mean, they want to do their thing.
It does take a reasonable amount of focus to work on your own stuff. At the same time, though, I guess you might say being a friend helps you make more.
Right.
And all of this, I've always considered My Little Pony to be my favorite hobby. I never have done anything monetary regarding that. All the art, even commissions and everything else, I haven't put a price on. I don't know. I guess that helps me differentiate this from my private life. But at the same time, I think it goes back to the concept of quid pro quo. We're all in this together. We might as well help each other out.
Right.
Actually, that's not quid pro quo at all. But never mind.
Quid pro quo is kind of the concept of you help someone out, then they're going to help you out, and it's kind of that to an extent. I mean, quid pro quo does kind of have some, depending on the situation, might have a negative connotation. But what you're really getting at is it's just being friendly. And Abraham Lincoln did have the quote, am I not destroying my enemies when I make friends of them? And maybe they aren't your enemies, but they certainly, it's just, again, kind of showing that mindset of it's nice to have friends for whatever purpose, if for nothing else to have someone that you can relate to and talk to and enjoy the company. A true
friend helps a friend in need.
A true friend helps a friend in need, indeed. So going back to some of the other questions now, backtracking of what is your perception, having such an exposure to the community, of this military brony sub-community? What do you maybe think about how we might be different, or maybe how we're similar, or, what have you when it comes to military bronies?
Well, I've never really seen any hard numbers related to this, but I think there might be a greater percentage of bronies in the military than in the general civilian population.
I can possibly. I think you might be right in that.
Okay. Other than that, I haven't really made any solid observations. I try not to get too much into demographics.
Yeah, I think, the reason it's kind of hard to gauge how many military bronies there are, because as secretive as someone in the general populace might be about it, that is even more so true for a military brony, just because of the scrutiny of the environment we're in. If someone is to find out, they are more likely to be ridiculed if they are in the military by their fellow military members. So I think military guys kind of play it a little closer to the heart. So I can't blame you for not really having a good idea on it, but from what I've observed, there's more of us than people would guess. Certainly. And a lot of the times you do see this kind of realization when another military brony who previously thought they were alone, which is quite often the case, is like, wow, there's a lot of us, more than one would expect. So I can't blame you for not really having a good idea on what our percentages really are, because we don't even know. But moving forward, I know you have an OC. What can you really tell us about him?
Well, it's sort of turned into a brand identity. It was my profile picture as I started out on FiMFiction, Orange Pony. It started out as a tribute to my first car, Plymouth Valiant, and that's actually the character's name. And I started off crack fic that starred him as a main character, and somewhere over the course of time, it turned from a self-insert into something with a mind of its own. And I've kind of maintained that and decided that it wasn't actually me anymore. A project got out of hand and went someplace I would have never imagined.
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm a personal believer in the fact that any true artist, when they start a project, oftentimes the projects will take on a life of their own to an extent, and inspiration kind of changes things in ways that could not have been planned or foreseen. But I do have one question to ask. Would you mind defining crackfic?
It's generally comedy, also generally completely off the rails, crazy stuff. That's at least the definition that I personally have of it. It's kind of broad.
Okay.
In my definition, it's you throw another character in and then run through the show, except with this other character, and things just snowball out of control. Alcohol, mecha robots.
Oh Lord.
Yeah.
That's okay. I think I have a good idea now. I actually think it's your approach for creating an OC is somewhat unique. I think a lot of people, when they try to create a self-insert original character, that they oftentimes try to use character traits or something that is truly representative of them. I don't think most people think back to their first car and base it on that. So that's a little different, but certainly I think we have learned by this point that you artistically are a bit different than I think the general mainstream. Just looking at the things on your DeviantArt and FiMFiction. But, so I have to ask the question. Who do you think is best pony, and any reason why you might think they are best pony?
I would say that the closest thing I have to an answer would probably be Applejack. However, that's not perfect.
Okay.
I think I take offense to how she acts so dumb. I know she's not, but she's too stubborn to, actually take a moment and think about things sometimes. If that were ever cleared up, I would probably go wholeheartedly with that answer.
Okay. So I'm not quite sure if so what is it you like about her?
Well, honest country charm and all that.
Okay.
In addition, you might say that I grew up in a little bit of a redneck area.
You might say? Okay. I don't know anything about your personal life, so I guess your mission at staying somewhat anonymous is successful.
Damn right.
But I'll take your word for it. So, kind of on the similar subject, maybe not your favorite pony, but who do you think is your favorite pony to write about? Is it the same? Is it Applejack, or is it a little bit different?
Well, I think I like Princess Celestia, especially during her younger years. I've written a few stories to that effect. But we don't really know a whole lot about her. She's in the show, she has speaking appearances, but we don't know much. And I think that lets the fandom give her a personality, all her own.
Yeah.
In the same vein, I kind of like Nurse Redheart, just for whatever reason. I did a story or two about her.
Okay.
Probably the background pony that I've worked the most with is Cheerilee, actually.
Really?
I have a whole series where she is a vampire.
An entire series, huh?
It's a couple of people have written stories for it as well, and I think there's 6 or 7 that I've written.
Oh, wait. So you're not only do you have a series of stories on this, but your series has inspired other people to write stories about this.
Yeah, I have, because there's so much stuff that I'm involved in. On my front page of FiMFiction, you can find a link to my story directory. And under the Vampire Cheerilee tab, there's all the list of stuff, and including chronological order.
Yes, that's one of the things I did notice that you have brought to my attention that you do somewhat differently is, first of all, you have a story directory, which is vastly useful considering how many stories you have. It's just this really great tool to find any sort of themed series you have going on, which, that's something I don't think I've really seen anyone else on FiMFiction do, not that I've come across anyway. And then the other thing you do that's rather unique is this little blog going on that you constantly update called Stories to Steal. So you want to tell them about that a bit?
Well, there's a lot I do. I actually brainstorm considerably more than I type. And if there's something I think is a good idea, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to get to it, either from a time or ability standpoint, I throw it in there, and if somebody happens to come by and see that they like it, I invite them to take it.
Well, there you go. Now, have you added in there that maybe they should let you know that this idea has been taken, so maybe you could erase it from the list, or like let them know when you publish it?
Not only that, but I would help promote it. I mean, it was my idea.
True.
I would drop a link in my blog, and all the followers, if they happen to like the idea too, would jump on it.
So not only that, it's maybe a good way for someone who is maybe aspiring to be a writer on FiMFiction as a way to maybe gain a little bit of notoriety, is take one of your ideas, because they get free advertising through you. 1,200 some odd followers get to see a blog that says, hey, look at the story someone wrote. So I guess if someone is in it for maybe getting more well known, that's something they should be on the lookout for. Not only that, if someone's kind of just having a little bit of a creative block of sorts, that might be a good idea to check out. Now, any advice to new or aspiring writers?
Don't take yourself too seriously. This is fan fiction, not life or death. Never forget that you're writing about magical talking ponies from a little girl's TV show.
Indeed. So,
I mean, authors out there have created some fantastically deep works of art, and I applaud them for that. But you can't take the fandom as a whole seriously. You can't get discouraged. You can't, if something doesn't work out for you, just start again. It's not going to hurt you for life. You're not getting paid based on performance. It's a good way to experiment and to learn.
So what you're saying is just do it for the love of doing it, is what you're kind of getting down to, if I'm reading what you're saying correctly.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's some good advice, and I think probably on top of that is just recognize that you will keep improving the more you do it, I think is another.
Absolutely. Well, to be fair, I've had a little bit more practice makes perfect than some people, but
I think that's easily safe to say. Just based on the sheer volume you have written, it's
I think the other day I cracked 900,000 words.
Oh, man.
Granted, I know some people that have written that many words in one story.
True. There's a few of them out there. But I think a few is as many as there is.
But honestly, I never really thought that this would happen when I first started out.
Well, that life is full of pleasant little surprises like that. But so, I guess, just moving slightly forward and kind of wrapping this thing up, do you have any public appearances planned that your fans might want to know about, like a convention you might be attending, perhaps?
Actually, I'm going to be at Everfree Northwest in Seattle on the weekend of July 5th, 6th, and 7th.
And so that's rather soon, actually. So I guess...
Yeah, just about a month.
I guess if any of your fans want to catch you there, they better get their tickets and travel plans taken care of.
Yeah, I've put this out on my blog, and I know there are a couple people I'll be meeting there.
Oh, so if people are following your blog, they are already aware of it. That's good. It's kind of nice to meet up with your fans and the community in general. It's a good experience. Talking from my own convention adventures, I guess, is one way of putting it.
Yeah, it'll be my first convention. It'll be a really interesting eye-opener.
Now, just curious, are you going to any other conventions this year, or is this really the only one you plan on going to at this point in time?
Well, I hadn't had any planned. We'll have to see how vacation time and everything else works out.
Yes. Vacation time, money, and life in general. I think everyone understands that. So I guess this is your chance to, that is pretty much the last of the questions I had for you. But this is your chance to kind of talk about anything you wish to get out there. Maybe any questions you might want to pose to me about maybe what I think about a certain thing on your DeviantArt or FiMFiction or what have you. The floor is yours, good sir, if you want it.
Well, as to what you think, that's why we have comments. I read them all, every single one of them.
Really? That's kind of impressive.
Well, just notifications. I don't have much of a personal life, so I've got nothing to do but sit on the internet all day.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of an exaggeration. I'm not actually that boring. I swear, I'm not actually that boring.
Take it back. Take it back. Okay, so I guess that is something important for people to know is, that you are actively involved with your fan base, which, again, not everyone is so committed to their followers. But
I try to ask for ideas. I understand that a lot of people are willing and able to contribute. It's always good to have some extra advice, and when you've got basically a battalion's worth of people following you, it
helps.
There's a lot. It does.
I would have to agree. I think that's one thing for any, sort of provider of entertainment in any form should really learn that lesson. I think that's something very important. But anyway, like I said, anything else you want to say is the floor is open to you. But if nothing else, we will wrap up this interview and say our goodbyes.
Well, you practically had to drag me into this interview, so I'm probably pretty much done.
I wouldn't say I had to drag you. You were very agreeable on this subject.
Well, OPSEC.
OPSEC indeed, good sir. Anyway, thank you for joining me. It's been a great interview. Not a problem,
We'll see how many people I can send to your website.
Yeah, we shall see indeed. FOB Equestria is certainly still an up-and-coming organization, so we shall see what the future holds for us, and I am excited to see what the future holds for you, so best of luck, good sir.
Thank you very much.
And take care.
Thanks.
This has been Spangle with FOB Equestria, Semper Philly.